Hello YouTubers, and welcome to the first installment of a game of theories. Today I give you the obituary of Mance Rayder. Who was this king beyond the wall? Where did he come from? And how did he become so highly regarded by all wildlings? Mance Rayder was a former brother of the Night's Watch, but he was actually born of wildling blood. When Mance was just an infant, the wildling band he was with were killed fighting the Night's Watch, leaving him an orphan. But the crows took pity on him, and they took the infant back to the wall to be raised as a black brother. Mance always struggled with his dual identity as he grew up. Conflicted and bound by the men who were responsible for the death of his kin, he always knew that he did not belong with the Night's Watch. Once, when he was out ranging north of the wall, he was savagely attacked by a shadow cat. A wildling woman who happened upon him, she took him in and healed his wounds, and she mended his torn black cloak with swatches of red fabric. On returning to the Shadow Tower, however, its commander, Sir Dennis Mallister, ordered him to replace his mended cloak with one of uniform black, thus erasing his memento of the kind woman who had once saved his life. This was the final straw for Mance. He decided that it was time to flee the company of the crows and rejoin his people, the free folk, to live as he wished. Already a distinguished warrior, he soon developed a reputation of a man of great integrity, and it did not take him long to discover that his true talent was in diplomacy. As time passed, a power that was believed to be lost from the world was once again growing, and the malevolence of the White Walkers was spreading throughout the lands. Mance knew that the only chance of survival for his people was to unite all of the northern clans and get them south of the wall by whatever means necessary. It took many years, but Mance Rayder accomplished the first part of his mission. He brought together all of the tribes, including the giants and the Thens. He was proclaimed as king beyond the wall. Now that all the people had joined under one leader, it was time to finish their plans by starting their war. They marched to the Frostfangs and began formulating a strategy. Lighting the biggest fire the North has ever seen, Mance gave the signal to attack Castle Black. Whilst his primary forces began their siege at the wall, he had already sent an elite squad of his best fighters to infiltrate and attack the castle from the south. A great battle was fought, with both sides suffering hundreds of casualties. The Free Folk lost 2 of their giants that night, and acting Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, Sir Alistair Thorne, was gravely wounded by Tormund Giantsbane, who was captured and taken prisoner. In the end, it was the Free Folk who suffered a first defeat, but both the Crows and Mance knew that it was really the Wildlings who tasted victory that night. They still outnumbered the Watch by 1,000 to 1. With Sir Alistair injured, it was Jon Snow, the bastard of Winterfell, who led the victory at Castle Black. But he knew they could not withstand another siege. They didn't have the men, and they didn't have the resources. Knowing that going beyond the wall would likely cost him his life, Jon had no choice but to attempt to negotiate a truce, or to assassinate the king beyond the wall. Mance Rayder allowed Jon into his camp, and he listened to what the crow had to say. The 2 old friends drank to their dead, and they tried to discuss terms. Mance wanted no more bloodshed for his people, but he made his ruthless intentions known, that he would do anything to get his people safe and south of the wall. Unfortunately, choice was taken away from both men. Stannis of the House Baratheon, the first of his name and king of the Andals and the first men, lord of the 7 kingdoms and protector of the realm, had arrived with his sellswords on horseback, and he sliced through the wildling army like butter. Truly defeated, Mance Rayder was captured, placed in chains, and taken to Castle Black. Facing execution for deserting the Night's Watch and for treason, Mance was offered one final salvation for him and his people. Stannis was willing to grant them the passage south of the wall, with lands to settle on, but only if Mance bent the knee, swore fealty to Stannis, and agreed to fight for him in the wars to come. Resolute in his final moments, and keeping true to his nature, Mance sadly refused the offer and accepted his fate. To die by his principles, in the eyes of his people, meant more to him than his own life. Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall, was burnt alive at stake, only to be shown mercy by Jon Snow, who put an arrow through his heart to end his torture. The great man had devoted most of his life in hope to lead his people to safety, but he was unable to carry out the final chapter of his life's work. Not long after the death of Mance, Jon was elected as 998th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Having shared in the visions of his old adversary, Lord Snow knew what would happen to the Free Folk if he didn't make the journey to Hardhome and offer them asylum south of the Wall. He needed to forge a temporary alliance with them. Going with Tormund, they gathered the elders, and it was in this moment that Jon was able to take up the mantle of their fallen king, and he convinced them to accompany him back to the Wall. Was Jon too late? From the darkness of the ice emerged an evil like no other. The wrath of the Night's King was upon them, and with him he had summoned the army of the dead in full force. Thousands of free folk were slaughtered as they tried to escape in the boats on the frozen lake. Lord Commander Snow managed to lead the surviving wildlings away from Hardhome to free lands beyond Castle Black. Mance Rayder's life ambition was finally completed. This act of humanity brings justice to the memory of Mance Rayder, forever known as King Beyond the Wall. May he rest in peace. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. There's going to be a lot more content coming your way, so if you want to see more, then don't forget to give a thumbs up and be sure to hit that subscribe button. If there are any obituaries you would like for me to do, then please leave a comment below. Have a nice day, and I'll see you guys next week.